Hello, in this video we will discuss about the sexual reproduction in flowering plant. For example, angiosperm. Angio mean hidden seed which that is covered with a fruit, and we will discuss about the double fertilization. And remember that the angiosperm contain flowering plant, and flower is the reproductive organ of the plant. Used for the here is the plant which that contain a diploid to an sporophyte. So remember here is, let's begin to draw a structure of the flower of the angiosperm. So angiosperm only plant which contain flowers, and it is the wide variety of the plant. So here is the flower which that's contain different part. Here is the male is contain anther, and filament contains stamen. This is known as stamen. Androecium also known as. While here is a female reproductive part is the stigma, style, ovary and ovule are present. Multiple ovule or single ovule on the basis of seed. So in the ovary there are more than one seed or single. So here is the sepal is also known as calyx, and petal is also known as corolla. Corolla is used for the attraction of the insect, and it is basically the stigma, style, ovary and ovule is collectively is known as the carpel. So it is the hermaphrodite because it is bisexual and monoecious. So here is, you can see, this is the structure of the male reproductive organ. Male gametophyte produces the pollen, and it is wrapping with the anther, and here is, you can see, the pollen sac, and it is the pollen haploid microspore. It is microspore, and the pollen grains it is known as. And after the meiosis, basically will produce pollen grain, but here is the pollen sac, and it is the male gametophyte. The produces male gametophytes. Remember. So this is the basically hermaphrodite. So let's begin to understand, and we will also understand with the monosexual. And here the mitosis will lead to the result of mitosis to produce the tube nuclei. So after the mitosis will begin to meiosis, and in this way the meiosis will produce tube cell 1n and generative nucleus 1n. So two nuclei will produce, and it is the sperm contain two types of sperm: tube nucleus as well as generative nucleus and sperm. So remember, tube nucleus, generative nucleus and sperm. This is the three type of male gamete. So this is a female reproductive organ which that's contain a ovule. Ovule contain, here is inside is the macrospore mother cell. It is the diploid, but in the case of meiosis, after this diploid we convert into the haploid macrospore. So this haploid macrospore formation, and this haploid microspore formation will lead to further mitosis of the haploid microspore to produce different type of cells. So let's begin to understand different type of cells in the ovary. So this is the female reproductive organ which contain antipodal cell and the fusion nucleus, two fusion nucleus 1n and 1n, and here is the egg nucleus 1n haploid, and the synergid cells will produce haploid. So there are different function for different cells. So here is the female gametophyte. That was the male gametophyte, but here is the female gametophyte. So the gametophytic generation is very narrow as compared to other gymnosperms. So this is the pollen tube formation after the insect attraction through a corolla, which that is color pattern of the color will lead to attract the insect, and insect is used for the pollination. The pollen grains will be attached with the leg of the insect, will bind with the stigma site after the generative nucleus and tube nucleus collectively in the form of pollen grain. And this is the male gametophyte, and it will be trapped. After the trapping it will be lead to pollen. So the tube nucleus will lead to create the pollen tube. So after the pollen tube formation, it will move downward for production of the pollen tube due to the enzymatic activity. So we will not going to understand with the detail, but just overview you can understand. This is the male gametophyte, which contain a generative nucleus, the male gamete, and tube nucleus is come from the male gametophyte from the anther. So this is move downward the pollen tube. So let's begin to understand the process and the production of pollen tube. So this is the pollen tube, which that is contain a sperms nuclei, one end, as well as tube nucleus. Tube nucleus is used for the increase of the pollen tube. So remember, after this is the growth of pollen tube will be occur. This growth of the pollen tube is due to the pollen tube nuclei, and in this way it go more downward, and after this move downward, this is the ovary. I am drawing again for understanding. So the ovary contain antipodal cells and synergid cells. So let's begin to understand what is that. In nourishes antipodal cell is used for it nourishes the embryo sac. So inside is the embryo sac. It is used for the nourishment and growth and development of endosperm. Growth and development of endosperm. What is the endosperm? We will discuss also what is the endosperm. But remember, the synergid cells is used for the pollen tube guidance and function for the fertilization. So this is the double fertilization. Why we call double fertilization? Because the two nuclei will bind or fuse with the different nuclei of the female gamete, and in this way the two nuclei will bind to one nuclei will use for the fruit formation, and one is used for the seed formation. So in this way the double fertilization we will discuss here. So this is the ovary collectively, and it's contain inside the pollen tube and guidance and function here inside, and a double fertilization here. Let's begin to understand. So in this the pollen tube formation. This is the two nuclei, the male two nuclei. One was the pollen tube nucleus, which that is used for the pollen tube formation. But here you can see this is the egg cell, and this is the antipodal cell, and this is the synergids. And in this way the pollen tube access to the egg cell will bind after the binding to form zygote. But the two fusion nuclei, one and haploid two fusion nuclei will fuse with the second gamete of the male sperm, the second gamete. After that formation, the zygote formation with the egg fusion with the nuclei, while the endosperm nucleus will bind with the two fusion nucleus to form a not diploid but triploid. So this triploid is the endosperm formation. Endosperm means the inside seed. It is known as the endosperm tissue. So the endosperm tissue formation, which that is used for the nourishment of the embryo. So embryo is come from the zygote. So remember, embryo is come from the zygote, while the endosperm tissue is come from the endosperm nucleus. But the seed coat will be developed in the ovary. So remember the ovule. Sorry. So the ovule will develop this. Basically, is the you can understand that is the pollen tube and guidance fusion, and in this way the ovular sac, which that is the here, and form the embryo 2n from the zygote, while the endosperm tissue is come from the endosperm nucleus, and the seed coat formation and the ovary ripening of the ovary is known as the fruit, while the ripening of the seed is ripening of the ovule is the seed. So the ripening of the ovule will become a seed, because the inside the ovule sac will form a seed, while the outer ripening ovaries form a fruit. So this is the seed coat formation, which that is the ovule ripening of the ovule. So here is the seed will develop into the new plant, and in this way you can understand this is the mature plant formation again, and this again is used for the pollination. So remember, more carbon dioxide will be increased in the time due to the industrialization will lead to more pollination, and more pollen grain will also lead to cause the bronchitis and allergic reaction due to the pollen is allergen for us. So this is the cross and self-pollination. What that means? The cross-pollination means two-parent bisexual plant involves for pollination separately, and recombination of plant genes will be occur. And in this way, the two separate plants required for the cross-pollination. While the self-pollination means the same plant involved for sexual reproduction of plant, and it is the hermaphrodite. But let's begin to understand. Previous was the hermaphrodite, but here we will discuss about the monosexual plant. So the monosexual plant can be a female if the ovary develop more, but the male gamete will not develop, or male anther will not develop. While here the when anther will develop more and the female ovary will not develop, but the vestigial form it is the male flower because the anther develop more. So thanks for watching. Please make sure to subscribe.